high side. Murphy shooting, save a rebound on the view.
Hey everyone, this is Casey. You are watching the Red Rubber Duckman All Sports Network. And I get that this video is probably going to be a little bit late for some people, but we have week 2. I have a week 2 recap of the college football season. I wasn't able to post predictions or get them out on time because I had a few errands I had to run at the time, and I didn't really have enough time to get that video out. But I decided I put out a post saying that I was going to replace it with a week 2 recap and tell you my predictions from there, which ones I got right, which ones I got wrong. And then, of course, we're going to have the week 3 predictions afterwards. So, without further ado, let's not waste any more time because we already did. Let's go ahead and do the week 2 recap. So, the first game on the docket for last week was FIU getting shut out by number 2 Penn State 34-0. Now, you already knew what I picked. I picked Penn State. The Nittany Lions, however, they did get off to a slow start. 2 turnover on downs. 1 punt, a field goal got blocked, but the Nittany Lions, they still need some improvement on finishing drives. You saw it with Nevada and now with FIU, but Penn State is the number 2 team in the country for a reason, and they just showed. And they showed it. And they just showed it to you right there. The next game was number 7 Texas rebounding from a loss against Ohio State, taking down San Jose State. You knew who I picked. I picked Texas. And Arch Manning went off on that game. 4 touchdowns, 295 yards, as well as 472 yards of total offense for the Longhorns, and they also forced 4 San Jose State turnovers. There was no doubt that Texas was coming out on top. Next, we have Illinois versus Duke. Now, Illinois was at the time number 11 in the country. I was expecting Duke to basically come out and win, but oh boy, was I wrong. What really outdid the Blue Devils in that game was 5 turnovers. Notably, a muffed punt deep from their own end, setting up a short field for Illinois' first touchdown. And of course, Darian Mensah losing the red zone fumble in the first half. And those are the main catalysts to how Illinois has reached the top 10 in the country. The next game was number 14 Florida State taking down East Texas A&M by a score of 77-3. Guys, I think it's safe to say Florida State is finally back. See what happens when DJU is not your quarterback. And the Seminoles I did pick to win, and for a good reason. Tommy Castellanos helped revive the program, basically. He passed for 237 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then FSU would score on 10 straight drives to open the game. That is what I wanted to see from Florida State last year, but better late than never, I guess. Next up was the Battle of the Cy-Hawk Trophy, with Iowa State coming out on top against Iowa, 16-13, and I picked Iowa State to win that one. They held Gronowski to 83 yards, and then the MVP of the game, of course, Kyle Conrady, who kicked 3 crucial field goals from 44, 27, and of course the game winner from 54 yards. And with that, Iowa State took home the Cy-Hawk Trophy in Ames for the first time since 2011. Next up, we have Baylor and SMU. Baylor coming out with a win, 48-45 in double overtime. And I did pick SMU to win, but then I forget that Baylor was pretty much SMU's kryptonite. Sawyer Robertson threw for 440 yards and 4 touchdowns, including 2 in the final 5.5 minutes of regulation. And then, of course, you have Connor Hawkins kicking the game-winning 27-yard field goal in the second overtime period to win. And it's a shame because SMU tried to stay up the whole game, but 2 crucial missed kicks. That was pretty much the nail in the coffin for the Mustangs. Next up, it was Kennesaw State taking on number 23 Indiana at that time. And Indiana I did pick to win, and you know why. 56-9 was the final score. 593 yards of total offense for the Hoosiers. And there were only 3 penalties. They kept the discipline to an all-time high, and as well as taking care of the football. That's what the Hoosiers needed to do, and that's what they need to do tonight. Next up, we had 24 Texas Tech taking down Kent State 62-14. You already knew who I picked. You already knew I picked against Kent. It's not a state. But they had 600, but last week, Baron Morton threw for 3 touchdowns, and there was a big pick six, and Skylar Gill Howard returned an interception, 55 yards for the score. And that was kind of what you expected from Texas Tech, especially against a team like Kent State. Next up, we had Virginia and NC State, which for some reason was not a conference game between 2 ACC squads. I did pick NC State to win, and I got it right. They went to 2-0. CJ Bailey ran for 2 touchdowns and threw for another. And there was just hardly anything Virginia could do to try to keep up. But it looks like NC State is trying their best to come back, and they're doing just that. Next up, we got Texas A&M taking down Utah State in the Battle of the Aggies, 44-22. Of course, I picked Texas A&M to win this one. And for one reason, Marcel Reed. He threw 3 touchdown passes, ran for another, but he did leave the game late in the third quarter. He took an awkward fall after getting hit by a defender. He did walk off the field after being checked out, and he spent time in the medical tent before jogging to the locker room. But the coach, Mike Elko, is saying that he should be all right and good to go for next week when they play Notre Dame. Next up, we have the top team in the country, the Ohio State Buckeyes, taking down Grambling State 70-0. You should know who I picked. All because of one reason, Julian Sand. He found his footing, threw for 4 touchdowns, set an Ohio State record for completed passes to start a game, and he fell 1 short of the school record for consecutive completions. What a good game from him. And if they didn't blow out a team like Grambling State, then you probably would have saw Ohio State drop in the rankings. Next up, we had number 4 Georgia taking down Austin Peay. I shouldn't say take down, I should just say beat, 28-6. I did pick Georgia to win, but my God did they struggle. They stumbled a bit in the rain. Of course, they had a weather delay over there in Athens. They were kept out of the end zone, 2 incompletions, as well as a third down stumble. And of course, tackles for loss. Really, really hurt the Bulldogs. And that helped and led them drop down to number 6 in the rankings. By God. Oregon taking down Oklahoma State 69-3. I knew Oregon was going to win, but not by that much. Holy God. Dante Moore threw for 266 yards and 3 touchdowns. And this was the biggest loss for Oklahoma State in Mike Gundy's 20-year tenure as a coach. If I remember correctly from watching Red's Chaos video, this was one of their biggest losses since 1907. I think that was the year he said, but holy God. did Oklahoma State knew they had a game that day? But then again, Oregon is one of the top teams in the country. And so that was part of the big reason why they moved up to number 4 in the rankings. Next up, we have Troy and number 8 Clemson. I did pick Clemson to win, but unfortunately it wasn't by as much as the Tigers had hoped against a team like Troy. Like, they trailed 16-0 midway through the second quarter. But 2 turnovers, they helped out the Tigers, and they would eventually come back and win. But that kind of performance propelled them to drop to number 12 in the rankings, and basically out of the college football playoff picture. Next up, we have Ole Miss, number 20, taking down Kentucky, 30-23. And let's be real, the Rebels really saved Lane Different Leagues Kiffin right then and there. And he has Kawan Lacey to thank, as he ran for 138 yards and a touchdown to help Ole Miss take down Kentucky for the SEC opener for both of these squads. And this one was revenge for a 2017 loss to the Wildcats last year. And so, Ole Miss, I'm not sure if that earned you a warranted spot on the countdown, but on the top 25, but I guess different leagues. The next one should not come as a shocker. Tennessee taking down East Tennessee State 72-17. This was a cleanup game for the Volunteers after their close matchup with Syracuse. 427 yards of total offense in the first half, and it was 48-7 at the break. So, it's safe to say Tennessee does have a very dangerous team after all. They just needed the right opponent to show it. The first edition of the border war in more than a decade. Kansas and Missouri. It's still a crime that they didn't hold this game at Arrowhead Stadium. But I did pick Missouri to win, and it sure as heck didn't look like it in the first half. But Missouri found a way to win, with Bo Prabula throwing for 334 yards and 3 touchdowns, and of course Jamal Roberts running for 143 yards, and of course the game-winning score. That was a very big game over in Columbia, and I'm hoping Missouri takes advantage because they found their way into the top 25 this week. Next up, we had some action with West Virginia versus Ohio. I did pick West Virginia to win, but Ohio is definitely out for blood in the Mid-American Conference. Of course, they are the defending MAC champions. Parker Navarro threw for 247 yards and a touchdown. However, he did throw 3 interceptions, but his defense bailed him out, holding West Virginia to 250 yards. Ohio did just enough to win, and that's all that matters, especially in a game like college football. Next up, oh boy, South Florida taking down Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. I did pick Florida to win, but to be honest, this was a very, very welcome upset, because South Florida is now the 3rd unranked team since 2000 to go 2-0 by beating 2 ranked teams. And it also didn't help for Florida that they committed 11 penalties for 103 yards. And despite gaining 355 yards of offense, they could only come out with it with 3 field goals most of the time. So the South Florida defense, they helped out, especially their kicker after he missed from 58 not too long ago. They moved him closer in field goal range in the final seconds to make him only kick from 20. And that was the difference, as South Florida was now in the top 25, ranked at number 18. Next up, we have 25 Utah taking down Cal Poly 63-9. I picked Utah to win, and for a very good reason. Devon Dampier. And it seemed like to be a perfect candidate to replace Cameron Rising. He matched his career best with 3 touchdown passes, including to Wayshawn Parker from 52 yards to cap off Utah's first drive, then found Ryan Davis for a 4-yard score. And then, of course, he finished with 192 yards. So, I think it's safe to say that Utah kind of fixed their quarterback problems and that they might be in the top 25 for a pretty long time this year. Next up, we have Carson Beck settling into his new home once again against the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats as Miami wins 45-3. I picked Miami to win, and you should know that. Carson Beck, like I said, found his way home and into the record books. He completed his first 15 passes to break a Miami record, and he finished 22 of 24 for 264 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that 15 consecutive completions mark is a brand new record, with Vinny Testaverde completing 14 in a row against Oklahoma in 1986. So it stood for 39 years until Carson Beck came to town. Carson Beck, hope you're enjoying your new home. Next up, we have South Carolina State traveling to Columbia to take on number 10 South Carolina. And the Gamecocks, of course, I picked to win. And it didn't come as a shock. After kickoff was delayed for more than 2 hours because of lightning in the area, Bakari Swain returned 2 punts for touchdowns to rescue a very struggling offense. And basically, to put it here, South Carolina did look like it was up past their bedtime, just trailing 3-0 before the first of the two Swain touchdowns. So, South Carolina, they did just enough to win. And that probably isn't going to fly once you get into conference play. Next up, we have number 3 LSU taking down Louisiana Tech 23-7. There were a whole lot of offensive struggles for Nussmeier's offense. Like 1 turnover, 3 punts, and having to settle for like 4 field goal attempts. I think 1 ended up being missed. But they did manage to shut out Louisiana Tech for 56 minutes, and that was enough to get them to win. And fortunately for them, they don't drop in the rankings. Next up, we have probably one of the biggest upsets of the week. Mississippi State taking out number 12 Arizona State 24-20. I had Arizona State winning, but what is college football without chaos? And Blake Shapen threw a 58-yard touchdown pass to Brennan Thompson with 30 seconds left to lift Mississippi State to a win. And that prevented the Sun Devils, who scored 20 straight points and took the lead with 1:38 left, prevented them from escape. And Mississippi State's win would drop Arizona State down below the rankings, down to 26. But fortunately for them, there's still an opportunity for them to get back into the rankings this week. Next up was pretty much the game of the week, and you saw it on my channel as we went live. Michigan and Oklahoma, number 15 and number 18. I picked Oklahoma to win. And of course, it was based off of Oklahoma being dangerous at home. And you saw it with Alabama coming to town last year. And that was one of the big reasons why I picked them. And it turned out being right. Because John Mater went off for 344 yards of total offense. They held Michigan's offense to 288 yards. And they made Bryce Underwood's time a living hell with 9 for 24 and only for 142 yards. So Oklahoma did their job against the Wolverines. Now let's see what happens when they go on the road. Next up, we have Vanderbilt taking down Virginia Tech in Blacksburg 44-20. I had Virginia Tech winning, but I forgot what kind of team Vanderbilt was last year. They were the big surprise to some of the teams in the SEC last year. Just ask Alabama. And Clark Lee said they were a really good team when they play well. And they played it, and they were good enough to hang in there, and they're good enough to win games. And Diego Pavia threw for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns to lift the Commodores to a win. And right now, as they go into conference play, they really need to step it up. Well, this was another classic. And in fact, this was another one that went to double overtime. Michigan State taking out Boston College 42-40. I had Michigan State winning, but my God, it was close. Michigan State's quarterback, Aiden Chillies, ran for a 3-yard touchdown and threw for the winning 2-point conversion in double overtime. And this was a career-high 4 touchdowns for Chillies, including 231 yards and also throwing for 39 yards. They said they needed to win this game because they thought they were the tougher team, and they did just that, and they got the win. And last but not least for week 2, you had Alabama taking down Louisiana Monroe 73-0. Unfortunately, Warhawks, you were going to be the punching bag for a very pissed off Alabama Crimson Tide squad. And that's why I picked Alabama to win that game. And Ty Simpson threw a school record 17 consecutive passes, 3 of them going for touchdowns. And they scored on each of their 11 possessions, 10 touchdowns and a field goal, and they only held the Warhawks to 148 yards. So, I think it's safe to say that maybe Dixieland Destruction is probably going to be a 1-episode wonder. All right, now with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into some Week 3 predictions. Now, keep in mind, at the time I upload this, it's probably going to be, there's 2 notable Friday games in this slate, and I think they might have already kicked off by now. But as long as you got it, as long as it's out, I'm only going to lose like 10 points for it being late. But let's go ahead and get into it. We got our first game with Indiana State traveling to now number 22, Indiana. I already talked about Indiana, how they fared with Kennesaw State. But Indiana State, they went off in a win against Eastern Illinois. They had 413 yards of offense, but they did give up 239 yards, but they managed to pick up an interception. I'm going to say Indiana is going to take this one, no contest. Next up, we have Kansas State taking on Arizona. That game is going to be on Fox. Kansas State, they lost to Army last week, a team that lost to frickin' Tarleton State. And the Wildcats were completely worn out by the run-heavy offense of the Black Knights. And that's the main tactic. That's the main tactic they're going to be using throughout the whole season. As for Arizona, they ended up whooping Weber State 48-3 behind 5 touchdown passes from Noah Fifita. And I believe Noah Fifita is going to be the X factor. I'm going to say Arizona takes this one in the battle of the Wildcats. Next up, we have reached our Saturday games. This one, number 4 Oregon is traveling to Chicago to take on Northwestern. As I mentioned earlier, they went off on Oklahoma State, and that's putting it lightly. For Northwestern, they did blow the tires off of Western Illinois. The offense got together after only 3 points against Tulane, and they managed to break up 8 passes, including picking one off. But I think you know which direction I'm going to go. I'm going to say Oregon takes this one in Chicago. Next up, we have Clemson traveling to Atlanta to take on Georgia Tech. Like I mentioned earlier, with Clemson struggling against Troy and Georgia Tech, they managed to take out Gardner Webb 59-12. Aaron Philo threw for 373 yards, 680 yards of total offense from the Jackets. And this one is going to be my upset pick, or one of them. I'm going to say Georgia Tech takes this one over number 12 Clemson. Next up, we have number 13 Oklahoma traveling to face Temple, an American team. In Temple, they faced off against Howard last week. They won 55-7, 560 yards of offense for the Owls, and that was their first time winning back-to-back games since 2021. But I think that streak is going to end. I'm going to say Oklahoma is going to ride out of Philly with a win. Next up, we have Wisconsin traveling to Tuscaloosa to take on the Crimson Tide. I mentioned how Alabama bounced back against Louisiana Monroe. Wisconsin, they took out Middle Tennessee 42-10. Again, what do you want, a cookie? And after only leading 14-10, the Badgers went on to score 4 straight touchdowns. And after 4 yards on 15 rushing attempts, they managed to pick up 149 yards afterwards. So you can't get off to a slow start against the Tide, and I think they will. I'm going to say Alabama wins it in Tuscaloosa. Next up, we have number 23 Michigan hosting Central Michigan. Now, Central Michigan ended up losing to Pittsburgh, and they did dominate time of possession with 36 minutes and 30 seconds, but it doesn't really help when you average less than 1 yard per carry rushing. And I think that's going to be the difference here. I'm going to say Michigan wins this one. Next up, we have Auburn hosting South Alabama. Now, Auburn just recently snuck into the top 25 after whooping Ball State 42-3. And, of course, South Alabama, they're coming off of a 33-31 loss to Tulane. And last week, Auburn showed why dual threat Jackson Arnold is the savior for this team. They're showing what the former Oklahoma Sooner couldn't do under the regime of the Sooners. We saw it in Baylor in week 1, and we saw it with Ball State this week. And in his first home game for the Tigers, Arnold completed all but 4 of his 28 passes, 251 yards, and 3 touchdowns for him. I think that might continue. I'm going to say Auburn wins this. Next up, we have Villanova traveling to Happy Valley for number 2 Penn State. Like I mentioned earlier, they beat the brakes out of FIU, shutting them out. Villanova is coming off of a 24-17 win over Colgate. That's 9 straight season opening wins for the Wildcats. And Pat McQuaid threw for 299 yards in that game. But you're going to be struggling against a stellar Penn State defense. I'm going to say the Nittany Lions win it. Next up, a Game of the Week candidate. We have number 6 Georgia traveling to Knoxville to take on number 15 Tennessee. Now, if Georgia is going to win this one, their offense has to not struggle. Whether it's rain or whether you're in a screaming stadium with 102,000 fans, you need to step it up. And I think Tennessee just got the momentum by beating East Tennessee State. And I think Tennessee is going to shock Georgia in Knoxville this week. All right, we talked about Texas Tech being the breaks out of Kent State. They are hosting Oregon State this week. And Oregon State's coming off of a pretty disappointing loss to Fresno State last week. Oregon State finished with 210 yards, more yards, I should say, than Fresno State, and 9 more third down conversions and nearly more than 15 minutes of possession. However, costly turnovers and mistakes on special teams was the Achilles heel for the Beavers that week. And if they're going to shock Texas Tech, they need to keep the mistakes down to a minimum. But I don't think it's going to matter. I am going to say Texas Tech takes this one in Lubbock. Next up, the backyard brawl between two unranked teams, Pittsburgh, West Virginia. Eli Holstein is back in full health with 340 yards, coming off of a 340-yard day against Central Michigan, 464 yards of total offense, and the defense, 11 tackles for loss and 5 sacks against the Chips. Meanwhile, West Virginia, they did force 3 turnovers in the form of interceptions against Ohio, but you can only rack up 250 yards of offense. You cannot be struggling in Morgantown, but I think they're going to do just that. I'm going to say Pittsburgh wins the backyard brawl. All right, we have number 14, Iowa State, traveling to Jonesboro to take on Arkansas State. Now, Arkansas State is coming off of a loss to Arkansas 56-14. They weren't able to get an offensive touchdown until the second quarter. The running game was limited. Even Jalen Raynor, their quarterback, was their leading rusher with 38 yards. For Iowa State, they held, of course, we talked about them holding Gronowski to 83 yards. Kyle Conradi, once again, being the special teams MVP. And I think Iowa State is going to take care of Arkansas State on the road. Meanwhile, next up, we got a team that recently jumped into the top 25. Albeit barely. Number 25, Missouri, taking on the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Now, Missouri, they managed to find their mojo this week. But Louisiana, they're trying to find it themselves. But they managed to take a step in the right direction with 315 yards and 3 scores, a 34-10 win over McNeese State. But now you're traveling to the other Columbia in the SEC. And they recently just took out Kansas. And I think it's safe. And Missouri is not going to take this opponent lightly. And that's why I'm going to say the Tigers win it. Next up, we got UTEP taking on number 7 Texas. Of course, we talked about how they bounced back against San Jose State. And now UTEP is coming off of a win over UT Martin, 42-17. Malachi Nelson had 3 touchdowns for 278 yards. And of course, he had Hassan Wilson to hand the ball off to. He ran for 117 yards and a touchdown. However, I'm going to be saying Texas is going to take this one. Next up, we got a surprisingly ranked matchup. Number 18, South Florida. They've made it into the rankings after back-to-back wins against ranked opponents. And they will be taking on Miami at number 5 down there in Hard Rock Stadium. I mentioned Carson Beck finding his footing. I mentioned the whole South Florida team as a whole finding their footing. I see them as a favorite to get the group of 5 spot. But I'm going to say, unfortunately, I think that's where the ride ends. I'm saying Miami takes this one. But if South Florida does end up winning, I'm just going to laugh hysterically. Next up, we have Ohio traveling to Columbus to take on the number 1 team in the country, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Of course, Parker Navarro, he's got to find a way to keep the turnovers down to a dull roar. And Julian Sayin threw for 5 touchdowns. All he has to do is stay consistent. And I'm going to say he will. Ohio State takes this one over their in-state opponent. Next up, we have Western Michigan taking on number 9, Illinois. The first time Illinois has reached the top 10 in 24 years. And they get a prize in Western Michigan. Now, Western Michigan, they're coming off of a 33-30 loss in overtime to North Texas. They led 24-10 in the third quarter and 27-17 early in the fourth quarter, but they could not finish the job. And Lance Taylor said it best. They have to put on a full 60 minutes together. Not 30, not 35, not 50. It has to be a full 60 minutes. And the sad part is, I think Illinois is going to do the same thing. I'm going to say the Fighting Illini, they take this one and potentially move up a little bit higher in the rankings. Next up, we have Arkansas taking on the different leagues team, number 17 Ole Miss. We talked about them struggling against Kentucky already. And Arkansas, of course, they did beat Arkansas State. They forced 4 sacks, 10 tackles for a loss. And the Razorbacks were able to lead 28-7 within 10 minutes of game time. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to happen in Oxford. I'm going to say Ole Miss wins. Next up, one of the Saturday night games, Florida and LSU. LSU stays at number 3. Florida under Billy Napier dropped below the rankings after losing to South Florida. And again, you have to limit the penalties. 11 penalties is a killer. And you have to find a way to finish drives because 355 yards, that's good. But coming out of there with 3 field goals, that's inexcusable. And you're going to a place called Death Valley in Baton Rouge against a team that is not looking to struggle anymore. I'm going to say number 3, LSU, comes out on top. And how about this for a potential game of the week? Number 16, Texas A&M, taking on number 8, Notre Dame. Of course, Notre Dame, they're coming off of a bye. And they had plenty of time to try to retool after their loss to Miami. And Marcus Freeman had this to say: you don't get the thing you want right away, but with the right amount of patience and persistence, the prize is still attainable. And hopefully the Fighting Irish learn that lesson and bounce back after the Hurricanes kicked a 47-yard field goal with 1:04 remaining. They need to find a way to keep Texas A&M out of the end zone and force them to waste drives with field goal attempts. And Notre Dame, I think, should be capable of doing just that. I'm going to say Notre Dame wins a tight one in South Bend. It's going to be a good one. Next up, we have Vanderbilt taking on number 11 South Carolina. Now, the Gamecocks have to find a way to keep the offense from struggling because Vanderbilt will eat that for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you saw that with Virginia Tech. And I think they should be able to do just that. I'm going to say South Carolina takes this one. And I hope you guys are ready for a resurrected rivalry. Because we got number 20 Utah taking on Wyoming. And of course, Utah, you saw what happened with them in Cal Poly. Wyoming took out Northern Iowa 31-7, and Wyoming is going to be getting their starting quarterback back with Caden Anderson. Welcome news, as the Cowboys are going to try to find a way to move the ball on one of the nation's toughest defenses. Now, Anderson did leave the game in the third quarter with an upper body injury, but they're saying he should be back, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I'm going to say Utah wins this. Next up, I hope you're ready for some Pac-12 After Dark, because we got it with one of these teams, Minnesota and California. I did read an interesting stat that PJ Fleck is 3-0 in West Coast games, and that includes wins over Fresno State and then UCLA on the road. And with California, they're also 2-0. And however, Minnesota comes in as 2.5-point favorites. It's going to be a late night for Minnesota fans because that game does kick off at 9:30 Central Time. But can they keep up with Cal's talented true freshman quarterback, Jaron Kawhi Sagapolitelli? I'm sorry if I butchered it. Sagapolitelli. I apologize. He became their second Cal true freshman to start a season opener when he led the Golden Bears to a 34-15 win over Oregon State. But they are going to be starting without tailback Darius Taylor. The Golden Gophers are going to be without their tailback Darius Taylor, who had a right leg injury during their 66-0 blowout to Northwestern State. It's going to be difficult to predict, but I think the unbeaten streak of PJ Fleck in West Coast games is going to continue. I'm going to say Minnesota wins this one. And finally, the latest victims of Pac-12 After Dark, Texas State, as they take on a now unranked Arizona State. And yeah, I don't think the Sun Devils are going to take that loss lightly. They had 251 yards rushing in their loss to Mississippi State. But Sam Leavitt has got to find a way to get in sync after going only 10 for 22 with 82 yards with a touchdown and 2 interceptions. You got to keep the mistakes down to a minimum. And I think they should be able to do that against Texas State. They did manage to beat UTSA 43-36. And Bo Sparks has been Brad Jackson's favorite target, as he had 12 catches for 237 yards. And that's 237 of Jackson's 286 yards and a touchdown, and running for 2 more scores. But the Sun Devils are going to be plain pissed off, and I think it's going to work in Tempe. I'm going to say Arizona State wins. So that is going to do it for me. Hopefully, we get a week of chaos. And keep in mind, I'm probably going to be very limited next week. I'll let you know in the community posts. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to like, comment, share the stream with your Why do I say share the stream? Be sure to like, comment, share this video with your friends. That's much better. And subscribe to the Red Rubber Duck Win All Sports Network. Again, I'll let you guys know what happens in the community posts. I'll keep you guys updated. But until we meet again, I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.